Before I get started, I want to give a shout out to all the paying members of my Patreon channel. Your support is necessary, and without you, none of this is possible. I'd also like to thank Ghetto User and Malika for their support of the channel. I'd also like to give a special shout out to Headliners Barbering Studio for the $20 donation.
Hallelujah!
And Christian Author for his $20 donation.
Woo!
And the L Factor for the $25 donation. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, Cash App and PayPal are available. Just be sure to let me know in the For section if it's okay for me to thank you publicly, or else I'll assume you'll want to remain anonymous.
And here we go.
Layman's Journal, Chapter 256. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard me say this 1,000 times, but I'm an oops baby, and my siblings are all boomers, and my parents are from the silent generation. So, when I was coming up, 50-year-old women were married. Most of them were empty nesters and grandmothers. They weren't buying books on self-love from washed-up comedians, attending relationship conferences with unqualified clowns on stage, nor were they taking relationship advice from old women with questionable credentials and no successful relationships to speak of.
Damn!
But that's because the women of my parents' generation were smart. No, they weren't as educated or had the careers like the women today, but they were wise enough to know to get married while they were young, and they stayed that way. They weren't out here trying to date at 40 and 50 years old. They weren't fighting over the scraps of the dating market while on the eve of menopause. And speaking of menopause, that brings me to the topic of today's video. It's Tracee Ellis Ross, the daughter of legendary Motown singer Diana Ross. But most of you know her as Joan from the hit show Girlfriends. She's been single for a long time, a very long time. And for as far as I know, she's never been married or been in a serious relationship. But recently, she made an appearance on Michelle Obama's YouTube channel, where the topic of dating came up.
One of the reasons, we've talked about this, that often I date younger men. And a lot of it is because—
Let's stop on that, folks.
Oh my God, we had a great dinner. We had a great dinner, by the way, where across the table, your husband goes, "But why?" And I said, "Well, maybe because I can."
Yes, Parish. This is what I'm saying. Tales from Tracee's.
It's fun. It's really fun to share.
Tracee tales.
But
you date a younger woman.
But one of the reasons, though, that because I had to ask myself that question, I was like, "What is this about?"
Yeah.
Because I want a partner, and so often, and it's not just that I'm older. I'm also very embodied. I am a full, very whole person who knows myself, who is in charge of my life, and who lives a very full, just robust life. So it's not just age, it's like life experience and sort of a difference. But I had to ask myself the question, why? Why does this keep sort of coming up other than they're hot and gorgeous?
There's that.
There's that. But a lot of men my age are steeped in a toxic masculinity and have been raised in a culture where there is a particular way that a relationship looks.
Yeah, she said a lot of stuff there. Most of it was delusional, and all of it was offensive. And we're going to talk about it. So, let's get it.
I do date, and it's a fascinating adventure out there, Mostly, though, I think there's really good men out there. I think to a certain extent, I'm a very unique sort of unicorn of a woman. And so it's going to take a unique person. And in the meantime, I have really learned how to live my life.
Now, the first thing I need you to understand is Tracee Ellis is a master communicator. Again, she's the daughter of Diana Ross. So she was born in the show business. She works in show business and has a huge social media presence. And she's done hundreds of interviews like this. So she knows how to craft her message in a way that's inoffensive or even deceptive. So I don't want you to pay attention to what she's saying. Focus more on what she means and how men hear that, as it will explain why she's still single. So when she says,
I'm a very unique sort of unicorn of a woman, and so it's going to take a unique person.
What she's really saying is, I'm a difficult to deal with, and it takes a unique idiot to deal with all the mess that I am. And I say that because Tracee Ellis is not unattractive. She's aged, but she's had some good years. And while she's not as cute as she used to be, she's taken care of herself. Even now, at 52, she has a remarkable body. So looks and aesthetics aren't the reason why she's still single, and nor is it because she hasn't met any good men. Now I know she's in a small, social circle of Hollywood, but she grew up in that world, and she attended Brown, so I'm sure she's met plenty of great men while in her early 20s, even 30s. So looks and access aren't the reason why she's single. Something else is amiss.
I was saying to someone recently that I'm one of the first generations of choice, and it's not anymore, which really, there was a window and that has shifted. And I do think that that's going to change dating for women so much.
When you mean you've been the product of choice.
Yeah,
you
like
mean
the assumption of Roe v. Wade and the ability for a woman to find her own delight and pleasure and choice around how she navigates dating or how one would navigate dating. And we're in a different world now.
Right.
Now what she's talking about is second wave feminism, which gave women birth control and the right to terminate their pregnancies, as well as the ability to choose their careers over marriage and motherhood. So when she says she's a woman of choice, she's chosen to prioritize her career.
Women, we're used to having a say in our lives.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether the whole movement is about sort of reharnessing us,
Sure.
whether is it really about,
And can that really
reproductive
work?
rights? Can that really work now that women are educated and we're being raised differently? I mean, the truth is that fathers are modernized.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
Mostly.
mostly they are, and if you were to ask the average man, how are you raising your daughter? Because you love her. The average father that loves their daughter wants them to be excellent, and they want them to have opportunity and freedom.
And
I mean, when you think about you don't want your daughter marrying some guy that chose her because he just didn't think about anything else and
who
was
believes
ready
that
at
her
the time.
body is his choice.
Exactly. So
Now Michelle Obama is on some bullshit too. Men who have daughters aren't raising them to be the tragic idiots that she and Tracee Ellis are. Now Michelle is married, but look at the man she married. Look at the stuff he's confessed. And most men who speak like that typically marry other men. But her husband had political ambitions, and you can't do that without a wife, and thus is the only reason why she's married, for now. However, those types of men do raise their daughters to be masculine and independent. But they aren't the majority. Most men aren't like the way that he is. They don't go for domineering women like Michelle Obama or Tracee Ellis Ross.
Because I had to ask myself that question. I was like, what is this about?
yeah.
Because I want a partner. And so often, and it's not just that I'm older, I'm also very embodied. I am a full, very whole person who knows myself, who is in charge of my life, and who lives a very full, just robust life. So,
And that right there is a huge red flag. Because marriage isn't a partnership. It's a unilateral relationship where the husband leads and the wife follows. And a woman who talks about being in a partnership or wanting to have a partner doesn't want to be under a man's authority. She wants bilateral leadership or shared authority. That's a woman who wants everything to be negotiated, where a man does lead, but under her direct supervision and permission. In other words, she wants to lead. But she calls it a partnership because that sounds more palatable. Remember, she's a polished communicator. But it's as she was saying earlier, she's a unique woman, accustomed to doing things on her own, and it takes a special idiot to deal with the mess that she is.
a lot of men my age are steeped in a toxic masculinity and have been raised in a culture where there is a particular way that a relationship looks. And anything that starts to smell of that for me, I did enough of it where I was controlled and felt like I was a possession or whatever those things were, or prize, I have no interest in it, and I will not do it again.
See what I mean? This also goes back to what I was saying earlier. Tracee Ellis isn't single because she's unattractive. She isn't single because there aren't any good men. She's single because she's a feminist and misandrist, a strong, independent woman who don't need no man. And that's why she wants a partner. Now, she could have just listed the reasons why she finds younger men more attractive. She didn't have to go and trash older men in the process. She didn't have to say, we suffer from toxic masculinity. which is another red flag, because that's the language that a misandrist uses towards assertive men, a woman who sees men as a natural adversary.
There is a difference. There is an openness that occurs with a younger man around whether it's gender fluidity or not even having an issue with homosexuality. I mean, something as basic as that. That there's times where I'll be, sitting across the table from somebody and just like, what did you just say?
Yeah, what century are you?
Like, oh my God.
Where's your horse and buggy?
Yeah, like, I'm so sorry.
So to me, it sounds like Tracee Ellis Ross wants a submissive man, a weak man, something like Michelle's husband. She sounds like Dooichi.
But okay. This is a huge red flag for me. All right. It's so crazy. I was gonna say men. Strike one. You're a man. Yeah. And you're heterosexual. Yeah.
So Tracee Ellis Ross can't find a man because she is a man. And a successful man on her self-perceived level isn't going to submit to her. That's why she's still single.
Men are not selecting Tracee Ellis Ross's. Not for marriage. She can still get it. There are a lot of guys who would slay that easy, would have no problem even being seen with her in public. But would a man that she wants do it? Let's say, imagine the man that Tracee Ellis Ross would get. Chances are he would be younger, maybe some up-and-coming young actor. Can you imagine a woman like Tracee Ellis Ross with a 58-year-old CEO of a Fortune 50 company, an accomplishment? No, they needed a completely different woman. And that's the ultimate point. The longer you're by yourself, the less likely you can be a good fit for anybody else. Here's some things, ladies. I'm going to ask you, ladies, especially you women over 35, what are you going to be willing to give up?
So I'm going to leave the interview right there, but you can watch the rest on Michelle Obama's YouTube channel. Now, the reason why I'm speaking on this issue is because, believe it or not, Tracee Ellis Ross, even at the big age of 52, is not going to die alone. Because again, she's attractive, she has a big name and a lot of money, she's a celebrity, and that covers a lot of sins. And that's the problem with this entire situation. You have women that don't have her looks or resources believing they can do the same thing. That's why I find the Dawn Robinson story so fascinating. Dawn, as beautiful as she is living in her car because she doesn't have any money, because she doesn't want to cooperate with a man. And if you want to hear more about that story, check out this video. It's some of my best work. But I think that situation is going to be the fate of a lot of beautiful women who listen to Tracee Ellis Ross. So I'm going to close things right here, but before I go, check out this preview of my latest video on Patreon. Layman's Journal Chapter 254. 2018 was a really good year for movies. Almost too good. We had films like Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, Deadpool 2, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. You could argue it was the best year in recent history, but in spite of all the commercial success of those films, there were two movies in particular that I believe were exponentially better than all of them. One was Searching, and the other was Widows. But neither of those films garnered any type of box office success. Both grossed less than $100 million. However, Searching did well for what it was. You see, it was a small budget film. It cost next to nothing to produce. So even though it only made $42 million in the box office, that was a huge profit given what it cost to make. Widows, on the other hand, was a massive commercial failure. It only grossed $72 million of the $105 million needed to break even, meaning the studio took a $33 million loss. And to make matters worse, it had an all-star cast. It featured Viola Davis, Liam Neeson, Elizabeth Debicki, Colin Farrell, Daniel Kaluuya, and Brian Tyree Henry, all of whom did an outstanding job in their roles. But still, they garnered no attention from the Academy. So the film had no commercial or critical success. And I think that's largely due to girl power fatigue. You see, Widows was released at the height of the DEI woke era of Hollywood. It came out at a time when films like the Star Wars sequel trilogies, the Ghostbusters sequels, and that god-awful Ocean's 11 spin-off, Ocean's 8. And all of those films featured strong heroic females and masculine roles that were originally written for men. So when people saw the trailer for Widows, a heist movie featuring an all-female cast with the underlying theme of weregirls fighting mean boys in a male-dominated world, the collective response was,
Oh shit, here we go again.
Yeah, they wanted no part of it. Everyone was tired of the girl boss flicks. And they were right, to a degree. Widows, like many other films featuring strong female protagonists in this woke era of movie making, is feminist rage porn. It makes masculinity in men the central part of the problem, while simultaneously celebrating it in women. So while Veronica, the film's lead character, is allowed to be a strong, stoic, courageous, and morally incorruptible leader, the men who exude those same characteristics are all evil and in direct confrontation with her. And of the few men who are the good guys, they're either dead or in submission to Veronica, the female protagonist. And if you want to hear more about that theory, please check out my breakdown of Speak No Evil. It's some of my best work. But getting back to the topic at hand, it all fits into the theme of this channel. Entertainment media is more than entertainment, it's propaganda through art. The stories may be fake, but the messages behind the stories are always real. For good or bad, better or worse, the goal is to influence your mind, change your way of thinking to affect culture. And the thing about propaganda in art is that it isn't always evident. It's easy to spot in bad films and TV shows. For example, you can see it a mile away in films like The Woman King and Captain Marvel, or in shows like She-Hulk and Amazon Prime's The Power. However, you don't see it in films that are entertaining. And Widows, in my opinion, is one of those films where the propaganda is not evident, because the messaging was subtle and grounded. And what I mean by that is, there were no she-man moments. There were no female Avengers assembling, no 90-pound women beating up a hallway full of men. So the women didn't dominate men physically. To the contrary, the film was intelligent and well-crafted. So unless you were told to anticipate it ahead of time or had an eye for that sort of thing, you wouldn't notice you're being preached to, as it's easy to get caught up in the entertainment of the moment, even though it hates and demonizes men. And speaking of the men of the film, they weren't stupid. But more importantly, you don't see them getting told. There are no lectures or finger-wagging or warnings to check their privilege. Now I can imagine some of you are wondering, how can I say this about a film like Widows, a film that dabbles in misandry? Well, that's because all movies, regardless of genre, have a bit of propaganda in them. It's just that the good ones focus on the plot, which is why I can appreciate Widows for its artistic prowess, in spite of the progressive messaging. And that used to be the case with all films coming out of Hollywood. The message was always subtle. They were metaphors buried within the narrative. But today, the narrative and overall entertainment value take a back seat to the message, as filmmakers today don't care if a movie is good, as long as the audience is lectured. And in a way, that's probably why I enjoyed the film so much. Again, that's patreon.com/Laymans Journal. And while you're there, check out the rest of the videos in my Patreon library, as I'm sure there's something there you'll enjoy. And if you like this video, please share the link on your social media platforms. I cannot stress enough how far that goes into helping me grow the channel. And if you have a movie suggestion, something that you think I should watch or break down, feel free to let me know in the comments section. And that's it. That's all I have to say about it. What do you have to say about it? Leave a comment in the comments section and let's have a conversation.
How am I spending my Friday? Some jerk chicken with rice seasoned, red beans and some bread. Got some red wine over here. And I'm watching Layman's Journal on YouTube. Shout out to the brother Layman. Check him out. I'll leave the link in the description. It's your boy Calvin King. And this is how I'm enjoying my Friday.